everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Off the Top. And I promise you, this time, I'm going to put on clothes.
Yeah, you can't see him, but he's in a robe, so it's halfway there.
Yep. Progress. But anyway, so once again, like last podcast, we are introducing a special guest. Obviously, you have me talking, Jordan.
I'm Julian.
And our special guest is...
What's up, guys? I'm Mark.
All right, so Mark is a friend of ours for a while now, in town for the holiday break. And he brought up a good point, seeing that two of us are recently on the back end of finishing up college, and one of us is recently getting out, or has been out of college for about 2 years, kind of talking about the value of education, our opinions on it, and kind of looking at some numbers and where it's going, and what our thoughts on what could be improved or what could be better over time.
Yeah, and I feel like that dialogue has been talked about a lot recently in this generation specifically, just because of the explosion of college and formal education and people taking that route opposed to other routes.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that you see is that, as you said, an explosion of just a lot of new things are coming out, and I think college is really struggling to catch up and teach kind of more current things. It's important to learn the fundamentals in the history, but if you're way behind on teaching what's now and what's going to be big, is when you get this kind of clash of mindsets and discussion on whether college is important to certain fields or if there's a better way it should be done.
Yeah, because right now, at least, I feel like if you really want to get in white collar jobs or professionalistic jobs, a college degree is somewhat of credentials. You need to have it to break through into those certain industries. And it'll be interesting to see in the future, with technology rising, if it's going to be more based off of ability or of credentials that you've gained.
Yeah, certainly. And so just so we kind of have a basis to start with, you two are still currently in college. Yeah. I'd really like to hear your opinion currently. What are the things that you guys get out of college right now?
I think the basis for me and what you get out of college, I'm a marketing major, minoring in internet marketing and e-commerce, so something that's kind of on the front line. But a lot of the things that I'm getting is very fundamental, traditional, kind of outdated information with a lot of, I'd call it glorified high school, so generalization of certain topics. So, I've taken 3 to 4 different science classes. I've just taken some random electives. And to me, valuing my college education, I wish there was just kind of maybe make it a 3-year program that it's directed straight to marketing and all the different in and outs and specifying, rather than having me going through general chem that I did in high school, just doing it in college. But another thing for me, though, I get a lot of, networking is where college really stands out to me, is I meet different people who are interested in the same field, and I can bounce those ideas off of them and kind of get a lead or a foot somewhere, an idea of where to go with this information.
Yeah, I'm kind of come from a different perspective, as I'm a petroleum engineering major, and the school I attend is just basically a strict engineering school. I guess we have econ major, but that's the only non-engineering major, math and science, kind of technical STEM major. So I feel like my degree has been super specialized, it's been really specialized, but kind of along the road, a year or 2 in, I realized that I didn't want to be an engineer at all. And so, I've been learning all this very specific stuff and all this very technical stuff, but as a person that kind of wants to veer more into investments and maybe oil and gas investments, I feel like sitting in the classroom, a lot of the times I'm this is kind of a waste of time. What am I doing here? But I need the degree. People think that the degree is super important for me. And when I tell people I'm a petroleum engineering major, they think that's super cool. But I feel I everything I need to know, I kind of already know for the jobs that I want to go get.
Yeah, I think you guys will, just to kind of touch on what you said, Julian, I share the experience of kind of having this kind of ubiquitous role of college of, they force you to do a couple different things that might seem like a wasted effort in generalizing and, taking an English class if you're a math major or something like that, where you kind of miss the mark on what you're actually there for college for. And then on the opposite end, I feel like we have a very, very nice selection of, people talking, because, yours is fairly more generalized, and his is, or Mark's is very, very specific in what he's learning. And I think regardless of what you do learn, I think you hit it on the head, Mark, when the fact that, and I was talking to an economics professor once, before I graduated about this. College is mainly a test of grit and a little bit of aptitude. So you got to have grit to be able to keep on continuing to educate yourself and going through things, and the fact that there's things that you don't want to learn, regardless if it's, random chemistry or if it's super specific into petroleum engineering. There's things that you almost miss the mark on, as far as like, why am I really learning this when I really want to end up being X, Y, or Z? No. So that shows grit in the fact that you guys are sticking to it because you have a goal ahead that you guys are persevering for. And also, I mean, it just shows naturally. I feel like people can obviously understand that it takes somewhat of an aptitude. It may not take a whole bunch to be successful in school, and it's may more be about diligence and, discipline and stuff, but it does take aptitude. So those two things, I feel like, is what mainly shines when you can say, I graduated with a degree in X, Y, or Z from, here.
Yeah. And I think you touched on it too. Like, to me, I talked on the generalization and you kind of touched on it well. And I think that's kind of a flaw in the American education system. I'm not too sure about international education system, but I think a lot of the stuff that you're relearning in college as your prereqs or general studies is something that you should really be learning in high school. And I think that's where that comes across. Like I said, I learned chemistry in high school, and then I learned it again in college and learned new things. And where I feel this kind of that breakdown between high school is just like, oh, you're general, but it's like, you're a beginner, and then it goes to like college, like intermediate, instead of going like, okay, your periodic table of contents in high school, this and that, or whatever it may be. So when you get to college, you can just kind of jump into these studies. Because I think at the end of the day, regardless, I've learned, I like using science for some reason, example, maybe because I don't like it, but say I've learned it, 2 or 3 times from the whole education system, like I always find myself going back to the same basic components that I learned earlier before college. Like, what is this element? Or, how do these molecules work? And then other than that, there's a bunch of other stuff that I guess filtered out over time.
Yeah. I think it's interesting what you say about high school too, because, as people say, oh, we should do like not trade schools in a sense, but like, oh, you should be able to graduate high school and go into like a 2 or 3 year program, and like, this is what you want to do, but I feel like our high schools, like, when you talk to kids, like my little brother is 19, he's always like, I don't know what I want to do when I'm older. I don't know what to do. All my friends know what they want to do, and I don't. But it's like, do they really know what they want to do? Because they've never done that. Mm-hmm. Like, is that just their parents saying that's what they want to do? Or is that just like their uncle does that, so that's dope, that's what they want to do? Because like, I went into school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I knew I kind of wanted to do investment stuff, but I get to school and kind of petroleum engineering is like the cool major. My parents are kind of like, oh, that's cool, and it's a lot of money out of school, and so you kind of delve into that personalized program. So it's like in high school, if there could be a way to kind of show kids more, expose them to different types of jobs, and maybe like give them like kind of little industry like internships almost in high school, so you can kind of know what you actually want to do, would be beneficial.
Yeah, I think I think that's a good point. I think there is a lack of connection between real world and what you're taught in both levels. Like another gripe I have with college is kind of real world experience, regardless of your major. Like, you get kind of case studies that are close, but you're never actually, like marketing major, I'm never actually working a real ad that people will see. I'm just theoretically doing something. Or maybe in econ, you're understanding numbers, but you aren't really getting to play when a bigger picture is in play, or like companies holding on to you to analyze this thing and make sure it's the right move. And then in college, it's like, oh yeah, I analyzed it. Cool, I got a B, I passed. It's like some fields, it's like, yeah, you analyzed it, but you missed a good chunk right there. So I don't know, maybe figure something out, or we're going to have a problem here in the long run.
Yeah, I think Jordan can really, both of you, because you both worked, but Jordan for sure can definitely attest to that as someone who's worked a job that like actually working a job, you learn so much more on the job than you do in school. Like with my internships I've had in the summer that haven't even been related to my major, I feel like I know more about like investments than I even do about petroleum engineering, even though I've spent way more time learning about petroleum engineering. But just through working, I feel like I've gotten kind of greater knowledge on that subject.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you guys are definitely lighting, like, you know, painting this picture. And I mean, it seems fairly accurate from my own experience in the fact that there's a very, very apparent dissonance or like discrepancy between what you learn in school and what you end up doing, regardless of if it's in the same industry or not. I think that there is something lost in the purely academic pursuits of learning something when you don't get to actually physically have some sort of hands-on experience with it. But while that is being said, I mean, there is something to get value out of it. And I mean, there has to be, because if you look at like, the rates of people going to college, it hasn't slowed down and it's actually increased. So, my question to you guys is, why is that the case? I mean, we've been talking about somewhat of the shortcomings and sometimes where colleges miss the mark, but why do you guys believe that college is still one of the more popular options for the youth getting out of high school and even people returning back to school, in like a little bit older age?
I think my personal opinion is, I don't know if it's so much to do with college. I think it's just the generation that it's a lot easier to see results or call out the BS in something when I think 20 years ago you could say, oh, I'm going to go to school and work and become the owner of this business and make $30 an hour. And then nowadays you can do that same thing and realize, oh, wow, they worked 25 years to get there, to make $30 an hour, but I'm kind of interested in this. And if I get a degree, this potentially salary when I come out is equivalent to close to, $28 an hour after 4 years rather than 25. So I think a lot of it is being the access to information and be able to call out or see like, I don't want to work at McDonald's this whole time. Like I see that there's this route that I'm somewhat interested that I can go to, or there's always these new programs that are being made to kind of relate to people, or trade schools or something along that lines that people see. They want to go from, where they're at to the end result of, having that nice house or whatever that dream is, or traveling the world. They can see that a little bit easier than I feel like generations past.
Yeah. And along with that, I agree with everything Julian said there. And along with that, like, that is kind of just the societal norm. Like, oh, if you're going to be successful, like, oh, you're smart, what college are you going to, and that is definitely like a societal norm for us. And also I feel like when you graduate high school, like you don't really have like a bunch of options because you need money, and like if your parents are like down to just support you living at their house, not having a job, like it's not very fulfilling. So you either like you go and get a job. Job can you get without a college degree? Or you can go to college, and I think college is great because it gives you 4 or 5 or however many years you're there to kind of mature and to see things through a different light. Now as a graduating senior of college this year, my perspective on the world is a lot different than graduating high school when I was living in a house with my parents, when they were kind of making all the decisions. So I think college is just such a great time of growth, and I think that kind of segues into a question I thought about before this podcast is about like college, like obviously like you think about when you think of college, you think of like the classroom and the academia, but I think like you learn so much too, like outside of school, like moving out of the house, like living by yourself, like kind of taking care of your own business. Like, I think that's such a big standpoint, like where I feel like I've even maybe learned more about like, socially and like responsibility wise outside of class that might even help me more in my future and in my jobs just socially than maybe a college degree even would.
Gotcha. So, I mean, it sounds like, it seems like it's, like culturally, it's just kind of the way that things are flowing, and also it offers you things that you learn outside the classroom, like world experience and almost experience with yourself and understanding how you are like as a person. And doing some research, I mean, it does make sense because comparing it to other investments, because really education or formal education is an investment on yourself. which I'm a big fan of that investment because you can take it anywhere. I mean, you hop on a plane, it's not in your carry-on. Unless your head is in your bag, which is another issue.
I think that's a felony in some places.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's one of those things that it has a higher return than the stock market or gold or anything like that. But at the same time, I think that there is something to be said about possibly going to trade schools or, doing a journeymanship where maybe you're not academically, as steeped in academia as somebody who goes to college. But I think in many cases, like what you gain outside of that, it's almost like, and granted, I haven't went, but I could imagine it being like college, but all the stuff that you learn is because you're actually doing it hands on. And there's none of that, like super high ubiquitous or like super high, high knowledge that you will find, you learn to memorize for a class and then it left as quickly as the term ended,
Yeah, and I think you touched on one of the big things that I think about in college all the time is, to me, college is a big thing about memory, right? I think it's you get this test, memorize these words or these answers or these problems, and you put it down and you get an A. You got an A, you're happy, you forget about it. And I also think it's one of those things that the basis of college, to me, the foundation is just kind of wrong in the fact that, like, all of us know our GPAs, right? And it's like, great, you have a 4.0 and that's what they value you on. They're like, oh yeah, you have a 4.0, but like little do they know, like maybe my 4.0 isn't as honest as someone else's 4.0. Or like maybe my 4.0 is a lot easier than someone else's 4.0. So you're valuing the end results than the intake of the actual knowledge. And I think in some cases, like our case, I don't think that's a huge deal. But in some cases, I know kids that have a 4.0 from going online and, finding all the answers and memorizing them and finding their ways to write it down and getting that A. And then you put those people out in the real world, like Mark was touching on, and it isn't the same as someone with, an honest, maybe they have a 2.5, but they really took in all the information and they're just killing it because they're actually applying it, opposed to like a 4.0 in Google can only take you so far in your job field.
Yeah, and I can kind of attribute to that whole phenomena. I was valedictorian in high school and, kind of just was all about just trying to get the A's, wasn't really trying to learn about stuff. And I get to school and also, my high school degree it wasn't really like the hardest, like some of the grading styles made it a little easier to get good grades. So I didn't really learn. I just tried to get the grade. And when I got to school, like all my buddies and teammates, they actually learned all that stuff. And for the first like year and a half of college, it was really hard for me and I was way behind because I had used that type of strategy to learn and I was just way behind on the curriculum. So yeah, the whole completion versus knowledge is a big problem, I think, in the education system. What are you actually there for, to learn or to get a letter on a piece of paper that says good job?
So it sounds like you guys are almost painting the picture of kind of how the education system fails students because what it tests you on isn't necessarily how well you've internalized the education or knowledge. And I mean, from my understanding, that's what it's for. Like the class I took or the classes I took were meant for me to internalize that knowledge so I could use it in the most like broad sense or however I needed to, like in the future.
Yeah. And that was some of the classes you took?
Well, I'm saying
general?
Just in general. And I mean, granted, studying for the CFA, I think that was mentioned before. I feel like very similar picture in the fact that, granted, I wasn't a 4.0 student in college, but, the amount of time and hard work and effort I spent in college was easily eclipsed by a simple, like, by one study session or like a 3-month study period for the CFA. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of people who are naturally just have natural aptitude that can kind of coast, or people, there's weak points of the education system, and I feel like that's could be addressed.
Yeah, I think, to me, I've noticed the education system is very pattern based. You can find out your teacher's pattern very quickly and figure out their grading style and what they're really for really quickly. And then, like you said, in your case, when you come to the CFA, there's no pattern. It's just like, all right, here's these words. I need to know these. Let me write these on my bathroom mirror so I see them every day and I know what's going on, as opposed to like in college, you're like, oh, wow, that's a cool word. Like, hey, teacher, will this be on the test? Oh, yeah, it will be on the test. Like, maybe that's different for each college experience, but like, they still kind of give you an idea of what's going to be out there. As the CFA just come out, or those bigger life lessons come out and are like, do you know it? Yes or no? Oh, is it going to be on there? You better know it if it is, So I think that's one of those things that college fails on. But transitioning to kind of the cost of college, I want to throw out some numbers at you guys and see what you think.
Please do.
I'm considering you both are interested in finance and economics and numbers. What do you think the average price of a private education in today's society is?
Oh, in real dollars?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Like current dollars?
Private education, yeah.
For 4 years?
Yeah, average cost per year.
Per year?
Yeah.
Tuition
and
I would
fees.
say like 60 grand.
That's a lot higher. What is your guess?
I would say like 35 grand.
Yeah, so private education nowadays is $35,000. And then I kind of adjusted some of these numbers. I went to a very loosely inflation calculator and looked at the price of inflation from like 1990. So 1990 to 1991, private education for the whole year was $13,000. And then adjusted to inflation at 2.28% is what it was giving me as an average. For those 26 years, it came out to around $24,000. So it's not it's a difference, but it's not truly a huge difference. And then I found from there, in 16 years, at this current rate of saying 5%, it's a 5% increase in tuition cost. Private college will be $92,000 a year, according to CNBC.
So shooting low is what you're saying.
So by 2029, private education will be $92,000, with state education in that same year, 2029, being $42,000, as it's currently $10,000.
So I was doing a little bit of the research I did wasn't too far, or like very on the same track as what you kind of painted the picture as. And so doing further research, I kind of understood why that reason was. This like really, really strange and scary statistics on how fast the college education, the experience is growing in expense. And so the things that I found is, first off, just plain and simple, there's more people going to college.
Yeah.
And, you got to think about what that means. So there's more people going to college, and I know you mainly talked about private colleges, but I mean, there's a huge amount of state and local, like, community colleges or state universities and things like that. The government subsidies for those colleges have increased as well, but nowhere near the amount that, participation rates and enrollment rates in schools are. So first off, like what the government gives those universities, that means that dollar, for every dollar that they give them, it needs to be spread much, much further than it ever previously had to. And then another thing to think about too is, when it comes to like our generation, there's a lot of it, I believe, and please, listeners, because chances are you are in the same generation as all of us here, a lot of it is the right fit. Like, just that phrase itself, I mean, it's very, very important to find the right fit in colleges. So you see colleges increasing the amount of like amenities. So for instance, like, oh, we just redid our library to have an awesome library with a 3D printer, or, you know, the amount of outside activities that this college has, or, you know, in-campus involvement this college has. And those things, I feel like, short of, you know, your normal expenses of college, I feel like those, from my research, those things have increased because this generation, what we value is the right fit. So to appeal to them the most that they can, they are trying to offer the most at their specific college or university.
So do you guys think with more people going to college now, the value of the degree is getting lower?
I think it might actually be the opposite of that, just due to like supply and demand. You know, like there's so many people that want to go to college and so many people that want to go to this specific college. So I feel like the institutions are like, all right, how much can we charge and still meet our quotas? You know, because if you think about it, they're trying to make money, you know, as institutions. And so with the increase of people wanting to go to college, you know, it's like, okay, well, how much can we charge and still meet our like enrollment rates?
Yeah. So in the institution's eyes, value's going up. What about your personal value?
I believe that as far as personal value goes, like how I personally value my own education,
as in like you're an employer looking at someone, so I guess their personal value, or the
well, I think it's always been it's a metric. It's a metric thing. And I mean, the employer, the first thing that he sees about you is this piece of paper that says, my name is, you know, Jordan
Hingle McCringleberry.
Yeah, Hingle McCringle, Dr. Hingle McCringleberry. And I went to X school and I have my doctorate in Hingling. So, I mean, before they ever get to meet you or get that experience, 99% of the time they see your CV or resume and decide on that part. And so it's very easy to discern or discriminate, or differentiate is the word, not like to discriminate the way you think about it normally. People who went to X school or Y school or got X grades or Y grades. So I think that it just raises the bar for people, you know, especially in white collar jobs, but blue collar jobs, I think it's the inverse relationship of the fact that, like electrician work, plumbing work, welding work, like those are very, very high sought after trades. And it's because culturally, it's been a more popular avenue, as you can see by the three people who are speaking on this podcast, to go to college compared to do some of those trades. So, the more that you see people flooding in colleges and less blue collar work, like for instance, here's a scenario. So you guys know Dubai, like the metropolis and of such lavishness and stuff. So economically, I was reading this article and I found it super like exciting in a nerd way. So basically everyone that has a very, very high paying, like does something that's very high paying and everything. But at the end of the day, you run into this problem where the only people who live in Dubai are people who have high paying jobs, but supply and demand, like you said, Mark, the demand for janitors never changed, but the supply has, because everybody else is doing something different. Mm-hmm. So what happens in that scenario? Do you find the janitors making more than, you know, a director at some corporation? Or, you know, you got to think about the counteractions to the main trend.
Yeah, I agree. I think that rolls into kind of like talking janitor, director, CEO. So someone without a high school degree will make, on average, $26,000 a year. As you bump up to, we'll skip to an associate's degree will get you $42,000 a year. And you'll get to a master's about $70,000 a year on average. But these averages are extremely skewed because the highest paying jobs are STEM jobs. So science, technology, economics, and math.
Well, so is that average or median?
Average.
Okay.
Yeah. So, with like the number one job right now, or highest paying job that is trending, is software development, which makes sense in many reasons to me. And then according to Forbes, the lowest was like a category assistant. So like a marketing assistant or like an engineering assistant or something along that was the lowest paying college degree job out of college.
Yeah. Julian, aren't you a marketing major?
Yeah, I'm a director of marketing. But I found that interesting, and that kind of got to the point of seeing that we have a STEM or two STEM students in here. Where is the balance between quality of life and education, since you come both from different schools? Because I think that's something that factors into the college decision nowadays is quality of life and what you're doing and what it rewards to or what you want your reward to be.
I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about that, Mark.
Yeah, so, as I am a petroleum engineering major, last time I checked on some website, but it's like the third highest paying job in the world, right? And I have most of my friends in the degree are 22-year-old, 21-year-old guys. I don't know one of them without a job offer of over $100,000. One of my buddies signed a job for $125,000 with, I guess I don't really want to say the company, but,
good.
Like they all have these, amazing jobs, but they're all moving to either places like Midland, Texas or North Dakota. And, kind of around my junior year, I realized like, hey, I don't really like petroleum engineering or engineering, I guess, at all in general. And that's not something I really want to do. And I also don't want to go live in one of those places. I'd love to live in a big city after I graduate. And my decision there was, okay, yeah, I could go make a bunch of money. And kind of all my life before that, and even going into petroleum engineering, I was like, yeah, if I make a lot of money, like I'll be happy. Like it'll be sweet. And once I started to kind of study the stuff and, have a pretty vigorous curriculum at my school, I was like, I'm not happy. Like I'm not happy learning this. I'm not happy doing this. And kind of I'm not happy in this culture, the people around me. I have good friends, but just kind of the overall culture of that industry, it's kind of just not who I am. That's not a knock on that industry. It's just kind of not really what I agree with. So, yeah, I chose to take a different path. And if it means that I don't make as much money at the start, I think I can still find a job that's pretty well off and probably hopefully be successful. But, I think that's important to me because I think, you get one life and I want to be, when I'm 22, I don't want to be kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I'd love to be in a big city, meeting new people and, kind of being at the school I'm at and kind of going through pretty vigorous education. I've learned that, life's not so much about like getting money and doing all that as much as everyone think it is, but like just surrounding yourself with good people and a place you want to live, doing something that you actually truly wake up and enjoy every single day. I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. Those are kind of the three things that I find most important to me when looking for a job.
So not to bring back a somewhat of a foreshadowing moment, but it sounds like petroleum engineering isn't the right fit for you. Sorry. All right. Sorry.
Yes, Jordan. I would agree.
But besides, what you said, I think if you were asking me the same question, which I felt like Mark, you answered it very well. I would say the same amount of things, and not to get too out there worldly, but I think that something like living conditions and things, or making a lot of money, I honestly, what I believe money is a physical materialization of options, and the fact of choice. So with a lot of money, you have a lot of choices, but that doesn't mean that your quality of life is better than another person. It just means that you have more options or choices, which eventually that even equates to power. So it depends on how much power you want and where you want your power. If you want your power in your buying decisions of if you want a brand new sports car or Lamborghini, and that's where you want to commit your power to, then it would be different than if you wanted to have all your power in, let's say, your time, and the power of you being able to manage your time however you wanted. And I feel like currently for me personally, and this is a personal decision, I tend to more lean towards putting my power towards my time than I do, being able to buy different things. And I do also want to say that I would consider economics more of a social science, so not specifically in STEM, but at the same time, like we do share a lot of similarities between, the science, the engineering, the math, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. And one fun fact I want to drop too, when you guys talk about quality of life and kind of understanding where you want to be at, even if you have $140,000 in student debt, which student debt is climbing and it's disgusting and that's a different topic. But realistically, if you work for 30 years, you have to make an extra $2 an hour to kind of make that worth it, which really, if you think about it, as much as we've knocked the cons of what the cost is or what the debt is, like extra $2 an hour after your degree isn't something that's crazy or unfeasible. So it's really understanding, like you're saying, your quality of life and where it's going to get you. And if putting that money, $140,000 towards education, that you're in the hole, but on the back end, you're going to be happy where you're at and you have the means to pay that back, is great. But